Okay, everybody, we are back. I hope you had a good break. Hope you got some food or coffee. I managed to get myself a drink. It's raining outside, so now my back is all wet because I don't have any sort of awning over my back door, which is pretty lame. But such is life. There's like a hurricane that came up yesterday and hit Louisiana and the Gulf again, and it's made its way all the way up to us here in North Carolina. So it's fairly damp out, but at least it's not 900 degrees. So
yes,
we've got.
Hey, I was talking to Todd yesterday. He said, "Hey, you should speak to JP. Charlotte's a great place to move if you're thinking about moving." I'm like, "No, man. Every day I speak to him, either the weather is awful, or they're expecting a hurricane, or they need to find shelter. I don't think that Charlotte is the place to go." But
No. I mean, hey, Charlotte's a nice place. I have no complaints. I mean, part of my problem, really the reason I want to get out of here is because I grew up an hour from here. And it's sort of like crabs in a bucket, right? Like they just keep pulling you back in, and it's impossible to get out. So, that's my biggest problem is I just want to, I don't know, I just kind of feel like it'd be nice to, go somewhere else for a while. But apparently that's, and now I've got a wife and house, and, kids and all this. I can't pull the kids out of school. Whatever. Anyway.
Oh, they're young. They're resilient. They'll be
Anyway,
fine.
enough about me. Let's talk about our guests. So we've got two of our favorite people who we talk to all the time on with us today. We've got Nicholas and Marsh. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Great to have you here.
Good morning.
They are who we work with when somebody tells us that a doc is missing or that it's got something incorrect or we need a new one for a new scenario. They are the ones who we go and talk to try to make that happen. So you guys are already ready with the new App Roles UX doc, right? Right?
Right? It only came out yesterday.
That's right. It only came out yesterday, and of course, documentation is part of SHIP, right? So we're super excited.
Yeah.
Super excited to have them here with us today. Just
throwing them under the bus. Why not?
No, it's okay. No.
Great start.
Well, we aim to please, right? But we're super excited to have them, and they're going to talk to us some about just sort of about how documentation gets made, and I think the kinds of things that go into consideration when you're talking about building documentation that hundreds of millions of people may potentially see out on the internet, right? I mean, this is from all sorts of backgrounds, from all sorts of geographies and cultures, languages. There's so much that goes into it, and of course, it's such a critical piece for all of our developers who we're trying to get onto our platform. So we thought it'd be great to have you here to come and talk about what it is you do. So Nicholas, you want to start and sort of tell us what you do, what team you're on, and how you fit into our big puzzle here?
Sure. So I'm in the same, customer and partner org as you guys, obviously. And my focus is on technical guidance for the developer audience. So for me specifically, that means like looking at what are the common issues that are coming up for our customers that our colleagues are seeing in their like one-on-one interactions with customers or their meetings with customers, troubleshooting, what is support seeing. So it's all about like capturing the knowledge from within our org that's very customer facing and getting guidance out about that.
So has there been one sort of recently that you can talk about, sort of how it went through that pipeline? Was there one that was super popular or a big customer ask and we got it sorted?
You were talking about documentation, but actually a lot of the technical content that I've done in this job, which was kind of a surprise, has been video. So I've been doing a lot of video content. The one, I think my favorite one is the dev training series that we released back in June. So that one was like, we have some colleagues who had been traveling and delivering a training series to developer audiences. And my thought was, why don't we capture this on film and put it out on YouTube so that more people can see it. And you're already, they already had practiced and had this presentation down. And so that was a great way to like leverage something that they were already doing, but then turn it into a piece of content that could then reach even more people. And so that's on YouTube. So if you search Microsoft Identity Platform, now that those videos are what show up first on YouTube, and we've got like 15,000 views since June. I was really happy with how that went. It's like 2.5 hours of, the very basics of what you want to know about the Microsoft Identity Platform.
Ah, very cool.
Yeah, but video content has been really fun to work on and really interesting. And sometimes people just reach out and say, I've been saying the same thing to customers like over and over. I keep giving the same presentation. Can we capture this on film? And I think that's a great opportunity, because then it saves them time. They can use that as the initial correspondence, like check out this video and I can answer any questions you have. But it also, when someone comes with that, it shows that there's an interest in that topic. And if we can make some content around it, and publish it, then it reaches a broader audience, and there's a signal that there's that interest in that topic already. So, so that's part of it. I also do work on docs as well, but videos have been like the majority of my time recently.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, and I remember that video series because it was kind of a big deal,
It got a lot of attention internally, yeah. Like the technical leads for our org were like, "Oh, cool! I'm gonna put all these in my watch list." And that was great.
Well, and I mean, thousands and thousands of views. That's a it shows that there's a need, and shows that there's a demand, and that people are getting use out of it, which is of course what we want to see.
Yeah, part of that is like I have a background as a developer too, and when I came out, I was really new to this area and didn't know much about it. And one thing I did was search for video content, because that's I like to learn via video content, and I didn't find really something that exactly explained it, how it works best for me to understand. I guess there wasn't something that was quite as like technical. There was some more like generic introduction material, and then some really specific stuff. So it was something I was interested in producing too, just because it was something that I think I would find useful if I was trying to learn. So kind of like putting myself in the shoes of the customer.
Very nice. Cool. Well, so Marsh, how do you fit into this larger picture, right? Because if I remember correctly, you sort of formally work in the Docs sort of organization, right?
Yeah. So I'm in the developer relations group, which includes Docs and cloud advocates. And then, within Docs is a kind of a large umbrella. We've got just the technical docs on docs.microsoft.com, but there's also Microsoft Learn, so all of the guided learning stuff. And then the Architecture Center, that all falls under kind of the Docs org, if you want to call it just Docs.
Okay.
Otherwise known as developer relations. Yeah. So we have several different groups within Docs, and then within that, we have there's Azure Docs, there's .NET Docs, it covers all the platforms. And so since I've been at Microsoft, I've written for several different Azure services, and then now most recently in the identity space on the identity platform. So I focus just on
service.
Favorite service, the Microsoft Identity Platform.
Hey, it's okay. We won't. We won't tell anybody. Even he likes it. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Great answer.
Exactly.
And you win this amazing free.
Yeah, get my notebook out and scribble that down.
This is on camera, so that's actually an honest answer. I would say it's favorite service because it's certainly the most technically complex that I've written for. I've written for Azure Batch, which was also that's also a really, really cool service. It was the first one I wrote for when I came on, and then I've done some storage. I've also done Azure AD B2C. So really, the identity space is, there's a lot of learning happening. Let's put it that way, and that's one of the things I really, really dig about this job in general. It's just everything I get to learn every day. Sometimes it's overwhelming, but it's also super fun.
So one of the
And I feel like that's another thing about it is like right now, there's a lot of resources and effort being put into improving technical content about the Microsoft Identity Platform. And my role was new. I started in this role like about a year ago, and was the first one within our CXP org working on developer content. I think, Marsh, on your side, they've been adding a few new writers this year, right? So it seems like across the board, there's been a lot of attention paid on technical content for the Microsoft Identity Platform recently. And that's another thing that makes it interesting, is that there's just a lot of room for growth and a lot of work that we're doing right now to improve it.
So there's always more work than people, though.
Like never ends.
Okay.
hey, well,
But I have a question. Do you find it daunting that the work that you produce actually ends up in front of millions of eyes? So it's not like a blog post that you write at your spare time as you learn things. You have that kind of an honest responsibility that the stuff that we create are going to be seen by thousands upon thousands of developers on a daily basis. How do you deal with that?
Well, there's a lot of work that goes into making content. Like there's I think that there's this idea that it's more blog-like, and it's like I'll write down what my experiences or a specific story I want to tell, and we'll publish it. But when you're putting stuff on docs.microsoft.com, and then also for the videos I'm working on as well, there's a lot of stuff. So like it's like, first of all, figuring out what are the stories we want to tell, and then once you've aligned on like what that story is, getting all the subject matter experts together, and so getting people to agree like this is how we want to explain it and this is accurate also takes a while just to get everybody on board with that. And then even once you have all of that buttoned down, you have to think about accessibility. You have to make sure that the content is clean, the voice is correct. You have to double check that the steps that you're doing actually work. And so there's just a bunch of different steps to get something published out the door. And like you were saying, I mean, I looked at the numbers right yesterday before coming on the show, and all AAD content in general, this is just for docs,
Right.
Gets about 5 to 8 million views a month, and the developer content gets about 800,000 to 1 million.
Wow.
For just the developer stuff. So there's a lot of visitors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which shows that's
Maybe you can talk about that on your side as well, in terms of all the steps that go into creating it.
Yeah, daunting. When I think the first article I published, I was terrified. I was terrified. That's 5 years ago or so now. So it was, beyond just, getting all the things right, that Nick covered. It is, it's you're putting yourself out there. You're the first little circle on the article. Your GitHub avatar is there, and if people look at the metadata in the article, they know exactly who it is, and so you're kind of, it's your reps on the line. But over time, no, I'm not. It's not daunting at all. What it is now is more, we really need to fix this, but there's 6 other whatever's ahead of that. I'm going to get to that. So it's, the stress now is more just so much improvement can be made, but you have to slot that in with all the other priorities of the new features that are coming out, and the other initiatives, just within Docs, the Docs org, and so it's more now. The stress now is just not having enough time in the day, or the energy, or the caffeine to be able to get it all done.
We'll send coffee. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, thanks.
So we got a question from Dark Eyes Girl now that docs are open source, has that made it any easier? Like how has the whole platform itself being open source, like how has that changed things for you?
Well, all of our docs now can receive GitHub issues, so it's actually more work. so
Stop
people find
PRs, please. No.
No. It depends. It depends on the service, and it depends on the product. some services and some products get more community contributions than others. As I mentioned, identity is a bit of a complex topic, so we get a lot of questions and a lot of requests for clarification through GitHub issues. So that it's a joke, but not a joke. We get these GitHub issues, and then we have to get the subject matter experts involved, and there can be some delay there because they're all busy too. What the takeaway that I would like everyone on the call to to have is, you can, instead of, hey, there's a typo on this page, you can fix that typo. And that would make us, give us less work.
Right.
No, but like the .NET team, they have a large number of very heavy contributors that they don't get paid by Microsoft, and they do a lot of work, a lot of really, really good contributions come in from the community. And so I mean it certainly it can go both ways. It can go both ways for sure.
Yeah, and I think that also depends on the topic that you're writing about too, because I think for .NET there's more of a history, there's more of a developer community that's been developing against it for a long time, and so you get those experts who are outside of Microsoft versus the Microsoft Identity Platform. It just seems like a more recent, and there's a lot of new stuff coming out, and so there's fewer external developers who've been working with it for a long time who make actual contributions. Like everything's open source, but we don't see that many contributions in terms of somebody actually changing a doc. Most of the time we just see feedback in terms of like, I don't understand this, or this isn't clear, or that didn't work for me, which is great because it tells us there's something we need to fix with the doc. So the feedback is all wonderful. It's just a lot of the feedback we get is stuff that's actionable on us. But it is open source, and people can correct it and make changes if they see that.
Well, so kind of on that topic, so there's an edit button on every doc, right? Or I guess most of them. I'm sure there's some of them that are not, but there's an edit button on every one. And there's a contributing guide which we sort of posted up. But how what kinds of edits? I mean, obviously things like typos and things like that are fairly straightforward. But if someone, say, wants to contribute something more than just a typo, or either a specific perspective on a doc that maybe wasn't considered originally, like what's sort of that process for, like how do we vet that a community submission is something that should be in the docs, or does it get rewritten, or like what happens when I go and put something into GitHub and say here's a change, or here's something I want to see differently. Where does it go, and what happens to it?
You hit the edit button, and it takes you to that markdown file that's in whatever GitHub repo it lies in. And if it's a small edit, make that edit, small, let's say, a few lines, 2-3 sentences, or typo fix, or whatever. And the recommendation would be to start small like that, get into the flow. So when you submit your PR, it then goes, the author, or I should say the owner of the article, because the owner of the article who maintains it isn't always the author of the article. But anyways, so the owner who's listed in the metadata on that article is notified. They say, there will be a comment added into your PR that says the article author has been notified, and then we either, some of us have our rules, our Outlook, our inbox rules set up, so we get notified right away. Other times, we do have weekly reports sent to us in the org when we have public contributions to review. Mm-hmm. So the owner of the article will then review that, and then can work directly with the submitter in that PR, via comments back and forth, like, hey, this looks good, but we need to do this, or we can do a direct suggestion, which, can edit the submission. And then we sign off. There's comment automation, which, because the repository is we don't have, not even article authors have write access to that repository. So we use comment automation. So we'll do, hashtag sign off, and that flips the labels on the PR to notify the PR mergers. We then have another team, a whole separate team that are the PR reviewers. So even us authors, we'll submit our own doc in the private repository, because there's also a private repository that mirrors the public repository. There's a whole other team of PR reviewers that then they go in and correct our stuff or call out things that we missed. A lot of what Nick was talking about, the voice stuff, getting your images aren't named correctly. You need to hyphenate between words. There's a lot of little things, that the PR reviewers will catch. So, anyways, we sign off, and then it gets merged, and then there's a delay between merge and publish, because there are 2 publish windows each day. There's a 10 a.m. Pacific publish and a 3 p.m. Pacific publish, and then sometime after that 10 or 3, the update will be live. For larger edits, so that's for small edits. It sounds like a long process, but really you're just submitting a PR with your change. The author is notified, the author reviews it, and then either accepts it and says sign off, or they say, this is great, but, or or this doesn't belong in here. What about, we could, do it over in this other doc. So you're I guess you could say you're engaging in conversation with the doc author at that point. And so that's the small edit. Do you want me to keep going on a larger edit? How much time we got?
I think that we very much appreciate any feedback that we get on the docs, and Marsh has been doing a good job of keeping us accountable too recently, and making sure that we're getting a good burn down on the issues that are open. Another thing is, sometimes I know, especially for topics that are complex, you might not understand and know what change to make, but it is confusing, and even just getting that feedback is worth it. So there's the GitHub issues where you can just, if you're signed into GitHub, you can leave a comment that says what's confusing about the doc or what you're looking for. And we have a support team that monitors those issues and then assigns it to the right author. If they can find a doc that answers your question, they do their best to find an answer to your question already, so they'll point you to the right place. And I meet with that team regularly. The support team is part of CXP, and we look for if there are trends or anything where it's like a lot of people have been asking about topic X and we haven't been able to point them to the right place. And the support team will then work with a subject matter expert who owns that topic that it's related to, or we'll come up with, this has come up a lot, but we don't have a good answer for it.
Yeah.
I actually haven't seen that since I started syncing with them. We've usually they're able to point you to the right place, or we know what doc needs to be edited to add some information in there. But just plain feedback without, a contribution is great, but just getting any type of feedback at all is great as well.
Well, and earlier, Marsh, you mentioned B2C, and I think because before I started in this role, I did a lot of customer work, and B2C is sort of a B2C is sort of a Jekyll and Hyde, right? Like, well, the one side of B2C that you see in the portal, it's pretty, it's relatively easy to use, makes great password database replacement, and for getting customer identity up and going, B2C is actually a great easy tool to use for that. But the other half of B2C, what makes it so sort of powerful, is all the customization that lives underneath it. And I remember, 2.5-3 years ago, where it was who do you know who may have worked on this at some point, right? Because it was just so complex and so difficult to understand and really hard to find docs. But in the last few years, especially, I've noticed the B2C docs have gotten I mean, they've grown tremendously. There's a ton of extra information. It's so much easier now to point a customer to say, "Hey, here's everything you need to know." And do we have you to thank for all the new B2C docs? I mean, it seems like there's a whole lot of. It seems like it's gotten so much better over the past few years, and I was curious, sort of, how does something like that happen? Like, how does is it just sort of an ongoing sort of a slow burn feedback of like, well, we've heard this over and over again and we've gotten some time to do it, or is there somebody coming in to say, this needs to be a priority, or this is a priority in a product team, or like how does which doc to work on, like how does that get prioritized since, like you said, there's tons of work and not enough people to do it?
Yeah. D, all of the above, really. To be clear, I was on B2C for about 8 months, and the docs became totally amazing in those 8 months. But no, I can't take all of the credit for that. B2C is interesting. We have also a team in the CXP org, in the customer experience org, that we work really closely with. They're the true subject matter experts on B2C, and so that deep customization, with custom policies and the identity experience framework. I mean, it is complex, but it is super powerful. So, sometimes it takes just one or two product team members or team members like that who have a real passion to help with docs, and then if you get a good cadence going with those folks, a writer can really facilitate some pretty quick and vast improvements once you get that cadence going. Once Nick's experienced this firsthand. The first doc you submit, you're like, oh, we need to fix this and we need to fix that. And to be clear, it's not the fault of Nick or the writer. It's anytime your first doc that you write from scratch, you're going to have a lot of stuff to fix just because of a lot of what Nick covered, just the voice principles, converting it from a blog style writing to a technical style writing. So you get all that out of the way in your first couple of docs that take 2-3 weeks to publish, and then if you have a product team member that you really gel well with, you can pretty quickly improve the story. But the other part of your question, how does someone need to identify an issue and then work to resolve it? That is also the case. A lot of Azure services will spin up. This is in my experience and in some of the services I've written for. I've also written for Azure Container Registry and ACI as well. And what happens is, before a writer is assigned to that service, you have the product group, the program managers, writing content, and they do build good content. But then what you need is, so this thing is sort of growing dynamically, and there's not one person sort of guiding the doc ship. And so you have these different branches, and the docs aren't necessarily playing together well. All the information's there, but now you need to figure out how to guide people through all of that information that's been added over time without someone sort of steering the ship. So then you'll get a doc writer come in, and we've got all this content. Now we need to figure out how to make sense of it all. And every single service I've worked with goes through that same sort of growing pain, and that's what we do. That's what we're working on now.
To those points, I think that's exactly, that's what we're doing now. I mean, my role was new and was started because let's take the knowledge that we're getting within CXP and apply that to content for Microsoft Identity Platform. Marsh also started recently, and I think that you're doing that work of um, making sure that there is a clear flow through the docs. In fact, I think that's one of your big areas that you're focusing on right now is making sure that there's a clear like journey. So like when you land on the docs, what is the first thing you need to know? Are the first steps clear? Can we guide people through things? And also like from my perspective, that's a big thing. So like what Marsh was saying is that sometimes you end up with a lot of docs. So like we have a lot of technical content there, but a big focus now is to make sure that we're organizing it in a way that helps solve real world customer scenarios. So like Marsh is doing that from an overall docs perspective of owning that docs repo and how are people flowing through this and what are the main scenarios we need to support. And from my side, it's like, what are we seeing with customers? What scenarios are customers running into regularly? And do we have guidance for those scenarios? So can we make content that maybe there already is the technical guidance there, but we need to be able to like lead somebody through it. Like, for example, something I've just kicked off recently with somebody in CXP is single sign-on guidance for mobile apps. And like the technical guidance is all already online. But we don't have like here's how you go through that process in a way that our customers have been coming to us and asking about. So we've had people who are the experts who work with a customer and they can help them implement it and tell them exactly how, but it'll be useful for us to, get that written down and have that guidance available for anybody to find.
Well, yeah, and we've heard that a lot, right? Which is, it's almost like there are two almost sets of docs, right? There's the technical, this is the API, this is the API surface, these are the parameters that each method takes, and these are the signatures, and these are what you should expect. But then, and that's fine, and that's great, when everybody needs to know all the different knobs that they have to turn. But then there's also the question of, at what point does it is prescription or that kind of guidance required to say, well, yeah, here are all the docs. You can go RTFM all day. Like that's not very that's not very helpful. So at what point do we start, or what do we do around that prescriptive side to say, well, somebody told you because an identity, especially as well as we do, is that we're in a unique position in that most people aren't identity developers, right? They don't identify as somebody who's going to write identity code all day unless they work here or at one of four different companies. So most people, identity is a step in a longer journey of getting an app deployed or building something for their business and solving some sort of a problem. And so it feels like from what we see is that our customers really need, what is my shortest path from A to Z, rather than here are the 4,000 different knobs that you can turn with a B2C custom policy, right?
And I think that that's like solved in a large part by the partnership that Marsh was talking about between the product group and the writers to make sure that we're getting that feedback of what are customers trying to achieve and how can we support what they're trying to achieve through our docs. Because and also there's kind of a difference that you were touching on between reference docs and more conceptual or how to. And Marsh can talk more about the specific categories of docs, but there for sure is a difference between just documenting an API, for example, but then explaining how you use a set of APIs in order to pull together a certain scenario, like the mobile SSO thing that I was talking about. It's like you can't just figure out from the APIs themselves necessarily what you're going to do to solve that situation. You need some additional guidance that's like, hey, here's how to think about that.
Oh no! He left us right.
It
was right at the edge. Yeah. He was just about to say. It was brilliance. Was just about to come forth, and now he's frozen.
We were just getting there.
Oh no!
Right.
Well, maybe. I hope he rejoins us. Especially, luckily for him, his freeze frame isn't too unflattering. So.
Right.
Something.
I want to go back to open source because this is something that I've always loved about Docs. And when I was a consultant, I was doing a lot of open source work, and I was working a lot with different products. So it came to the point that I had to look at different products and then try to find solutions and what have you. One of the most amazing things that I did was actually contributing small changes to the docs, which made it to the top of my GitHub. So when I was looking for jobs in the consultant space, I would always point people to my GitHub repository, and people were like, "Oh man, this person is contributing to the docs and the ASP.NET team," and literally my changes were so small, and like they were not groundbreaking stuff, there were no new articles, but having that as a badge of honor is such an amazing thing. So I would like to encourage people that if they're looking for open source contributions, if they want to build a cache of products that they're working with and they want to use their GitHub repo, then working with docs is probably one of the easiest ways to get started with open source. If you've never done open source before, you don't have to edit code, or you have to worry too much, and it becomes such a I still look at my GitHub and smile when I see a contribution to docs, let alone all the other work I'm doing in open source. So just kind of a sidetracked, but just the docs giving the ability for everyone to contribute and become part of the community is an amazing thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a big part of right. I mean, I think I've written software for 17 years now, and there's always the jokes about is anybody ever going to get around to writing docs and writing the documentation? But the thing is we have thousands of products with millions of features across them, right?
Yeah.
And the days if you're writing line of business software and it's awful, for example. People have to use it to get their job done, so they kind of don't have a choice, right? And they know the person who built it. And even some vendor and SaaS software out there is like that too. But I think especially now, right? Like you can't build software that's completely opaque and in a box, because where we are, of course, it's commercial, right? You don't have to use our stuff, and so we want you to make to elect to use our stuff. And I think that's where we can't ignore the fact that docs are just as important as the code and the features themselves. Because if nobody knows about them and nobody knows how to use them correctly, then what's the point, right?
Agreed. I think docs are more important than the features themselves, because if you can't find how to use a feature, good luck looking through the API or the source code. And especially for developers that are fairly new to a feature or product, then documentation is becoming pivotal to the success of engaging with that product. So from my perspective, the work that you guys are doing is fantastic, and it's equally as important as the features that we're churning out on a day-by-day basis. Hopefully the PMs are not going to kill me next time I speak to them.
Hey, Nick is back. We got you back, Nick.
Hello.
Yeah, man, we got you back.
Yeah.
Welcome back, Nick.
And we don't.
My laptop decided to restart, so here I am on my desktop.
or maybe our IT team decided to restart your laptop because they thought that it's important.
I had to join from my laptop because my desktop was restarting. So luckily that timed out. Okay, so here I am.
That's okay.
But yeah,
that's okay.
No, I mean, I just got the end of what you're saying there about docs being important, but honestly, that was why I was a developer before and I moved into content, and the reason was when I started, I worked at a company that didn't have any technical docs, and we were onboarding a lot of people, and you just had to figure it out for yourself. And there I got involved in the very first initiative to make technical docs, and I saw how big of a difference it made. And so for me, it's I've seen that direct impact that having good content can make, and how important it is to have that. So I really think it's an essential part of a product.
Yeah. Well, no, and I think especially in identity too, we are in that place where, we're stopping the mall, right? But we're that stop in the mall that everybody has to stop at, right? It's the place that everybody has to go to end up wherever it is that they're trying to go, and it's complex, like Marsh said.
It's kind of right. It's a funny thing because so there's some developers who really need to get into the weeds if they're offering a service that's identity related, but there are a lot of developers who just need to authenticate, and for them it's funny because you need to trust the service, obviously, and in order to trust it, you kind of want to understand how it works, but at the same time, it's a small part of the app overall. It's just I want my users authenticated, and then I want to have them signed into this app and go on with their experience, right?
Yep.
So it's yes, it is a small part of it, but it's also such an important part to get right from a security perspective, and building that trust is so important. And so that's a kind of it's a delicate balance between making sure people understand what's going on and trust it, but not having to explain everything.
Right.
You know, that's a difficult balance, I think.
Well, yeah, because you don't want to have to be a protocol expert in order to feel confident that
And you shouldn't.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. To feel confident
That's
you're
like
signing
part
users
of what
in.
we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, is to make it so you don't have to be a protocol expert in order to have secure logins, right? That's like the idea. You don't have to.
We need to abstract that part away, though.
Yeah.
Well, and
for most people,
and we're unique too, right? If you look at our competitors in identity specifically, a lot of them, they have identity platforms, right? That's what they sell, and that's what, of course, what we have too is an identity platform. But that's one sort of bucket of work of how do you sign users in, and how do my admins control who can sign into what, and protecting my data. But then we have this whole other side of all the services we offer, the Offices and the Azures and Dynamics of the world. And so as a service provider, there's the whole collection of complexity that goes into, well, what is OAuth, and how do I go and access your calendar data for this super cool app that I'm building, or access your presence data, or help you manipulate your Azure resources. And it's totally overwhelming if you're coming in new, because you're like, well, I mean, I guess I need to sign a user in, but yeah, I also need to connect to Graph or to Azure or whatever.
Or even if you don't, like I just need to sign a user in, but if you come in and it's like, you can sign a user in and use Graph and do all these things, and here's all the features, and did you know about OAuth? And like, then it's like, okay, never mind, I don't need to sign a user in.
Yeah,
exactly it.
Yeah.
Overwhelming. So that's the balance, right? There are some people that need to know all of those, especially when we're talking about ISVs who are doing identity solutions.
Yep.
Like, they do need to know all of those details.
Sure.
But not everybody does, and we don't want to intimidate people by it either.
Yeah. Well,
so we talked about scenario-driven documentation in the past, right? One big thing that we're looking at is how can we help people do those scenarios? And is there a change in the docs? Do you feel that there's a switch in the docs or the samples that try to address these things without really overwhelming people?
Yeah, that's, I think Nick touched on the project that we're kicking off, and it's we've kicked off, and it really is going to be all about guiding the developer on down the path of whatever application type and framework they're going to use to build that whatever thing they're trying to build. Again, as Nick said, it's like, here's the billion things. We support all of it. Now take your pick. It's that opinionated guidance from a scenario-based perspective that we're really going to try to see if we can pivot toward and test it and make sure that's successful and that people like that. But that's where we're headed. I want to build a single page app, in JavaScript or Angular. Or I want to build or I want to do a web app in .NET Core. Now, tell me what I need to know just to get it built simply. Mm-hmm. And then if I want to, I can add all this other stuff later, but give me an opinionated path of, how to generate your project, or, tell me just, what package to install. Don't obfuscate all that stuff either. So again, like, there is that balance.
And I think that part of it is understanding what the customer is coming from and in those scenarios. And then also, Christos and JP, that was something that you were working on too with the scenario based, find what the docs that you want. So that's a huge part of it, is how's the customer trying to approach this and what do they need. But there's also, like, we have had a lot of work going on in this space for a while, and there's people making samples, and there's people who are in the product group who are really driving, meeting developers where they're at. There's people in CXP who are doing it. There's the docs people. And so another part of it, a part of the effort, is just to unify and get everybody on the same page and working in the same direction to make sure that when a customer comes on, they can get all the right resources that are linked together, right? Like, I'm working on videos. We want to make sure those videos are integrated with the docs so that people can find the resources together, right? And then we want to be able to make sure that the samples are discoverable, and that we're documenting how to use the sample. So and that ends up on docs. So there's a lot of work that goes in just making sure that on the inside we're all aligned together as well.
Well, yeah, and we've seen some of the result of that too, and more sort of clear scenario guidance, and it seems like it's all only going to get better from here. So
yeah, that's the goal. What we need is, I've made this joke before, but we need the product group to stop releasing features.
Wait, you're breaking up. I can't hear you anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Stop with the features so we can, get the docs right. But no, it's and then
that's it. Yeah, that's a huge thing.
Stop having conferences like every time Ignite or Build comes up, everything needs to stop and everybody wants their features docked, that they're releasing, and so there are these large overarching improvements that are in process and going to happen, but certainly not as fast as we want it to. But we recognize the issues. We've heard from the customers, from all of you, and we're headed that way. But it doesn't happen overnight. Just to rewrite, one doc, it can take a week, literally to get it rewritten, and then you go through another pass, and then you go through the steps, and then you invite people to do a tech review, and they come up with a bunch of edits, and you have to redo your screenshots, and because
a week would be
change this parameter to this, and now you have to reshoot all your screenshots, and so
a week would be great. If it happened in a week, that would be amazing. It takes a long time to get a new doc or to do improvements. And earlier, we were talking about what goes on behind the scenes that people might not be aware of. I think that's another big thing that gets forgotten is the maintenance. We talked about feedback that we get, but just maintaining the screen. The portal looks new. We have to update all the screenshots, and so that's another thing. It's like different from putting a blog out, for example. Once you publish something, you own it, and you have to make sure that it's up to date forever. And so
right.
We want to have a lot of great content out there, and every time you add to that, that also adds to what we need to maintain as well. So that's just another thing to think about too.
Yeah. Well, so we gotta wrap up because Christos and I have another call. We have to go present in 6 minutes. So, fellas, this was awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. It was a really great. It was really great, really insightful. We really appreciate all your time. Hey, everybody! So next week is Ignite Week, and Christos and I are going to have some commentary. We're going to do some live streams of some of the keynotes.
Live streaming, live commentary.
We'll do some live streaming and commentary of the keynotes because that's just what the internet needs is more people's opinions. So we'll be streaming most of the identity sessions and maybe even pick out a couple extra cool ones, extra cool sessions that are going to be live. So make sure you tune in for that. We're going to put our schedule out by the end of the week so you'll know when we'll be live, but we'll be back as always at 10 a.m. Eastern on Tuesday. And fellas, really appreciate you coming. We will publish Nicholas's cell phone number so that you can call him personally with any new doc requests.
No.
But again, if you have any questions, issues, concerns, leave them in the chat. Send us a note on Twitter or send us a note in email, and we will see you all next week. And we're gonna find a channel to go. Raid. Let's see Layla's live. So let's go over and see Layla.
Layla's right. Yep.
And let's see. We're almost ready. Almost ready to go. We got 5 seconds left to wait for her. So we're gonna go over and. It looks like we're taking 31 people with us over to Layla, so we'll see you all on Tuesday, everybody. Have a great night. Have a great afternoon. See ya.
Cool. Thanks, everybody.